I'm very excited to share some of my favorite picks from the last 100 reads. Let's get to it. Hi everyone, I'm Sandy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have 1001 book countdown, top 10 favorite picks from the last 100 books. If you're not familiar with the 1001 book countdown, I will leave a card up here for you where you can go and check out the original video. But basically, I'm reading books off of the 1001 books you must read before you die list and slowly making my way through all of those books. I combined all 5 editions of that together, which means I actually have 1,315 books to read, or 16, depending on what list you look at, and started documenting my journey out here on YouTube a few years ago. And today I am very excited to walk through just some of my favorites from the last 100. This is actually from books read through 901 through 802. So within that 100, some of them were read over a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago at this point, because in 2024, I had just a hiccup in my reading. So I didn't make kind of my 100 that I had wanted to do around August. I didn't finish that until actually I think pretty much in December. So yeah, it took me a bit longer, but I had trouble. I also had real trouble narrowing this down. I have a huge stack of books over here. I had trouble narrowing this down to 10. And some of it, I was going through the list and there were a number of 5-star reads, a number of 4-star reads, a little bit of an overrepresentation from one author. And so I was just trying to figure out a way to kind of narrow it down. So I have 5 honorable mentions. First one is Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood. First of all, I mean, again, these covers are just beautiful. I absolutely adore these covers. Margaret Atwood, Alias Grace, as the first honorable mention. The second one is A Pale View of the Hills from Kazuo Ishiguro. The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. I talked about this one in my recap of 2024. So if you want more information about what I liked about that one, you can definitely go check out that recap. But yeah, that one's an honorable mention. I do have one Charles Dickens, which is Great Expectations. I didn't expect this one to be actually in there, but I did give it 4 stars, so I thought I would just mention it really quickly. And the last one that I have in the honorable mention category is Mill on the Floss by George Elliot. This happens to be the overrepresented author. I could have easily thrown this in the top 10 and thought, let's just do something a little bit different and not include it. But it is arguably one of my top George Eliots. And yeah, I'm having trouble not having it in the top 10. But George Eliot's Mill on the Floss. So those are my honorable mentions. So for number 10, we have A House in the Uplands by Erskine Caldwell. This book is absolutely incredible. It's a post-Civil War kind of a little tiny book, but it has really stuck with me for quite a while. And it stuck with me largely because this character, I just wanted her to do something more than what she was doing. And she was so frustrating, but she was such a memorable character that I just had to include it. And it really is a book that exposes a lot of what landowners could do as far as the people that were freed after the Civil War, when the slaves were freed, and shows how landowners could still take advantage of them, which I thought was very, very well done. But there's some despicable characters, and then I wanted her just to kind of break out of her shell and do something. So yeah, House in the Uplands was number 10. This book was actually book number 821 on the countdown. Oh, and I do have videos, by the way. I will put all the videos for the countdown videos for where I talked about these originally, and you can go and check those out as well. All right, book number 9 was a reread for me in 2024. And it was Slaughterhouse V by Kurt Vonnegut. This was also a subscriber favorite pick that I picked back up. And this is just such an amazing example of an unreliable narrator. I thought Kurt Vonnegut did an absolutely excellent job of showing you what it would be like to be disconnected in time. Like, if you can imagine the idea of knowing when you would die and how you die, I thought everything about this book, I just really, really loved it. It was so weird, so strange, but it was one, again, I could see me rereading this again and finding something new every time I read it. So it goes. So that was number 9, Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse 5. The video, it was number 828 in the countdown. Okay. Number 8 is probably the one I had the hardest time putting on the countdown, but arguably I had given it 5 stars. It was on my recap for 2024 as well, and that is Daniel Deronda by George Eliot. My video for this, I rave about how much I love this book. I think the hard part for me is I don't remember very much now. I know that there's a character named Gwendolyn, and there's obviously a character named Daniel Deronda, and they talk a lot, and they do a lot of stuff, and it's highly dramatic. I don't remember a lot more than that. But Daniel Deronda, what I would say is if you want to know why I like this book so much, definitely go watch this video. It was book number 819 in the countdown. But George Eliot is such a fantastic author. I really love how she throws something unexpected in her books, and almost all of them have had an element of that for me. In some ways, though, it kind of threw me off. That the unexpected element definitely made me think something else was going to happen in some of her other books. So very, very well done. But I don't remember as many details. But with this book, it was number 8. I read it number 819. Okay. Book number 7 was also a 2024 read, and that is Oscar and Lucinda by Peter Carey. These characters are incredible characters. You get so much Oscar, so much Lucinda in this particular book. You think it's going one way, you think of how it will end up, and then it surprised me, which is why I ended up keeping it on my number 6. I do think that this is probably a book that more people should be talking about and reading. It is very, very well done. I do like these characters quite a bit, even though it didn't go in the direction that I necessarily thought it would go in. I read this as book number 829 on the countdown. Okay, book number 5. No, sorry. Book number 6 is an absolute classic, and that is Tarzan of the Apes by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This was book number 833 for me, and it was an actual reread. And I loved Tarzan of the Apes. I am so shocked that the first time through I loved it so much, the second time through I loved it so much. And really the whole thing with this one is it is unexpected. You think you know, I thought I knew the story of Tarzan of the Apes, and then I got to read this and went, oh, it's very different and very violent in this. And he is largely just so alone for so much of it. But it is such a good classic. I still have not read The Return of Tarzan, but Tarzan of the Apes definitely deserves the number 6 spot. Arguably, I could put it higher. It was very hard to keep it at number 6. And like I said, this was book number 833 in the countdown reads. Okay, book number 5. We're halfway. Book number 5 is Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I read this way back at the beginning of 2023, I believe. It was book number 874 in the countdown. This book is told from 2 different perspectives and has a lot of interaction, not interaction necessarily with those 2 characters, but told from their perspective, told in different times. It has a lot about immigration and race, and it is very well done. It is one of those books that I think I should reread again because a lot of the details are skipping. I'm losing a lot of the details. There were a lot of things in here like about blog posts, which I thought were amazing, absolutely incredible. I did like that. Just know if you read this book, there is some very difficult content in this book, and this author could be called a problematic author as well, but it did hit my number 5 spot on my countdown. Number 4, number 4 is Middlemarch by George Eliot. Like I said, George Eliot is very well represented in this top 10. Middlemarch, I read this also in the beginning of 2023 or 2023. And it is one of those books that is a soap opera from beginning to end. It is broken into 8 different books. It is gloriously dysfunctional, is how I described it when I read it. Not all of the characters will interact with each other, even at the end of the book, but it is so soap opera-y, drama-y, and but it is, it's a time investment to read Middlemarch. It is. It's one of those books that just you have to take your time with, or I had to take my time with. I don't mean to tell you what to do. I had to take my time with reading, really had to spend some time. I read it as a group read with some people, and it was such a lovely experience. 3 of the books, 1 honorable mention and 2 of the top 10 came from George Eliot. I have now read 5 of the 7 main novels that George Eliot wrote. I have Romola, and then I can't remember the other one that I haven't read yet, but I've read all of the ones off the 1001 Book Countdown. That makes me somewhat sad because I would love to read another one on the countdown, but she is very well represented with 5 books on the overall countdown. So yeah, very good. Massive novel, highly recommend it, but probably not as your first George Eliot novel. Okay, number 4. That was number 4. Number 3, I can count. Number 3 was also on my 2024 list, and that was The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall. This particular book just broke my heart. It is one of those books that the main character felt just she deserved so much more. I wanted so much more for her, and she just never got what I wanted for her. And this idea behind this particular book, the character's pain stuck with me in a way I wasn't expecting. And I just, you can see this poor, these lovely characters on the front of this book. But yeah, it was one of those books that I remember more of what this book was about, at least from the general themes of it, and just really, really liked this particular one. But yeah, it broke my heart in a big way. All right. Top 2. Oh, I did not struggle with number 1. I will tell you that. 2, 3, and 4 I struggled with, but I did not struggle with number 1. Number 2 was A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mystery. I read this back in 2023, early 2023, and still remember it as an absolutely fantastic novel. If you watch the video, as far as what I had said originally, I had a friend who said that they thought the book was incredible, but they didn't like it. And I can understand that. This book is hard. It's hard to read. It's hard to see read about the class divisions that are in this area, in this time period, and the mistreatment and it is very difficult, but the characters are so vibrant in this, and they have such a compelling story or stories in it that it just is one of those books that's like I was rooting for all of these characters all the time. I'm not going to spoil what actually happens in the book, but just know it's a hard read, but it is so incredible, and I definitely would recommend this particular book. All right, my number 1. I said I did not struggle on my number 1 when I looked back through 901 to 802. This book, as soon as I saw it, I read that in this chunk. This is number 1. There wasn't even a question for me. And it is somewhat surprising because I wouldn't have thought that this book would have been a 5-star before I read it. And that is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Oh my goodness. So this is probably one of the most intimidating books on the 1001 book list. And it is a chunk. It is a big book. And Victor Hugo takes his time at times, goes on random tangents about sewers and in random paths. But the main characters in this book are so incredible. You have Jean Valjean, who is just an absolutely amazing character. I loved the slow start to it. I loved how the story unfolded. I absolutely adored how they had Jean Valjean's character arc. I thought Cosette was a very compelling character. Fantine's story is absolutely heartbreaking, and it sucked me in, and I couldn't let it go. I just had to read it. I had to keep reading it, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Easily my number 1 pick from the last 100. If you are intimidated by this book, what I would say is find a buddy and read it with them, because there is so much to talk about in this book, and don't get scared off by the sections that diverge, right, and go away from the story, because it is worth it. It is such a good chunk of a book. I can't gush anymore about this. I consider reading it. I'm considering rereading it because I miss the story and I miss the characters, and I would love to be back in this world a little bit. But Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, well deserving of the #1 spot. Like I said, it wasn't even a contest. As much as I like Define Balance, as much as I like Middlemarch, this one was heads above all of those. Highly recommend. If you want to read a Victor Hugo, read this one. Don't read Hunchback of Notre Dame. That one I remember being very slow and dry. This one is absolutely incredible, absolutely worth your time, and worth the #1 pick. What do you think of my top 10? Do you agree with these? Are there any that go, wow, man, no, that's a horrible book to have in your top 10? I would love to hear all of that. I have linked all of these videos, all of the videos where I talk about the original, in the original video, I've linked all those down below for you. So if you want to go and check those out, you absolutely can. And I am super excited to share my bottom 10. It won't be nearly as enthusiastic, I would say. Looking back at that list was like, oh, yikes. Okay, I got to talk about those again. You can also tell that I love these books because I kept them. As you can see, my shelf behind me is starting to get a little full, so I'm having to make some choices, and all of these have made the cut. I have kept them on my shelf, so I clearly love them. Not all, and I can guarantee you the books in the bottom 10 is not the same thing. I don't think I've kept hardly any of those. So yeah, I'd love to hear a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this journey with me. I hope you enjoyed this top 10, and like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.